Your relationship isn't failing because you're falling out of love, and it's not going to get any better by you just trying harder. Yes, you heard me right. I said what I said, and I stand by what I said. The real reason that your relationship is failing is because of your unconscious, protective survival responses to stress or to conflict. I know that's a mouthful. Rather than engaging in connection in situations where you feel unsafe, not physically, but emotionally. I'm talking about emotional safety here. What happens is your nervous system, it takes over, and your logical thinking, it just goes out the window. And when this happens, it leads you into engaging in things like fighting or shutting down or withdrawing in order to protect yourself. And if you're wondering what you're trying to protect yourself against, you're trying to protect yourself against emotional pain, from deep-seated fears of abandonment, from fear of being overwhelmed or suffocated by your partner, or from the fear of the vulnerability that comes along with intimacy. And maybe you don't even recognize or realize that you had all of this going on in your body and in your nervous system until you got to this point where you're at this crossroads in your relationship and you're trying to figure out why you are no longer feeling the way that you felt at the beginning of your relationship. And maybe you and your partner didn't even realize the damage that you were doing to your relationship until you got to this point, this crossroads, this questioning, where you're feeling like you're in a crisis mode in your relationship. And I wish I could say that if you two just tried harder, it would solve everything in your relationship. However, this can't be fixed with trying harder. You have to learn to be safe in your body and emotionally safe in your relationship. And that right there, that's a practice. That's a skill that takes consistency and time to build. And if you take a step back and you look around, you may see couples out there, these picture perfect looking couples with relationships where everything just seems easy. And maybe, just maybe you're in that type of relationship. But the fact that you clicked on this video makes me think that that's not the case for you. But when you do take a step back and you look at those couples with these picture perfect relationships and you see that their relationship looks just so effortless and easy, it's probably because they learned somewhere along the way how to regulate each other's nervous system, which in turn, when this happens, it fosters this sense of calm and security in a relationship, which then eliminates the need to constantly anticipate problems and to do this guessing game of what or how my partner is feeling, and then trying to interpret or misinterpret every action, every behavior, every comment, etc. But when you don't see what's underneath the surface or the work that they've put in, all you see is the fact that they look so in love and they look so committed to each other. And then you take a step back and you look at your relationship and you ask yourself, well, I'm also so in love with my partner, or at least I used to be. I used to feel that way. So why does our relationship look so different from theirs? We're super committed to each other too. I just don't understand why ours looks so different from theirs. But the problem here isn't the fact that you two love each other less, or the fact that that couple, maybe they seem like they have it all. The problem is the fact that the love that you and your partner have for each other is trying to exist alongside you and your partner's nervous system incompatibility. Meaning that when you and your partner are stressed or in survival mode or in conflict or overwhelmed, your love for each other can and will be overshadowed by the need to cope with whatever is going on. And when this is the case, you are on constant high alert in your relationship, which can lead you and your partner to burnout, can lead your relationship to burnout. Furthermore, when you are stuck in this nervous system incompatibility, you usually experience these inconsistent cycles of affection and conflict in your relationship, which then creates this kind of addictive type of dynamic between you and your partner, which then traps your nervous system and gets it stuck in this kind of dysregulated, constant state of flux, where it struggles to return to a baseline of safety. And none of this means that you chose the wrong person, or that you and your partner are a bad match, or that you should just call it quits in your relationship. It just means that you and maybe even your partner were never taught how to regulate your nervous system. And without knowing how to calm your own body, or without recognizing when your partner is in this state where their body and their mind is stuck in a stress response, then you two are operating as if you are under a threat. You are operating as if you are under a threat. And then you view their defensive or withdrawing or shutting down behaviors as a personal attack. Or you may even view it as a sign that they don't care about you, which then leads to the cycle where you two end up mutually hurting each other. And none of this is malicious. It's literally nervous system dysregulation and incompatibility. And I want to be clear about something here. Lasting love isn't just about chemistry and compatibility. And what I mean by that is sometimes your relationship success really depends more on your early life attachment patterns. So it depends on things like the way you learn to connect with people, the way you learn to trust people, and the way you learn to feel safe with someone, rather than just on the initial passion or chemistry that you feel when you start dating someone, or the shared interest or compatibility that you have with your partner. And this is because your body and your nervous system is wired to replicate early life childhood attachment patterns in your adulthood relationships. So while chemistry and passion and excitement and compatibility and shared values are important, they do not determine how you navigate intimacy or if your relationship will last. Attachment is really the pinnacle. It's often the unconscious emotional tie between you and your partner's relationship health and reliability and long-term success. So what I'm trying to say is that love is a very slim piece of the puzzle, but your relationship health and success is literally about how your body and your nervous system learn to handle closeness and conflict and connection while growing up. That right there is what attachment is about. And more specifically, it's really about your attachment style pairing with you and your partner's attachment style. And what I mean by that is that you are either a secure, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment style. And your partner is either a secure, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment style. So depending on what your attachment style is versus what your partner's attachment style is, that right there is what is trying to pair together. And those attachment pairings determine how you and your partner communicate. They determine how you and your partner work through conflict, and they determine how you two meet each other's needs. And often with insecure attachment styles like the anxious, the avoidant, or the disorganized attachment style, the pairing can create challenging and high stress dynamics where you and your partner end up repeating familiar and unhealthy patterns from your past relationships. So it's not just about you and your attachment and what you are bringing into the relationship in regards to your attachment and your nervous system. It's also about your partner and their attachment and what they're bringing into the relationship in regards to their attachment and their nervous system. But the good news is that attachment isn't a personality trait. It's literally your nervous system memory. It's what your body learned that loving someone cost you. And some bodies, they learned that when I need someone I love, they show up for me. And when that happens, that creates a stable, secure type of love and attachment. While other bodies learn insecure attachment, which looks a whole lot different than secure attachment. Those bodies that learned insecure attachment, they learn that loving someone feels unpredictable or unstable. And because of this, they feel like they always have to stay on edge and stay alert in relationships. So they stay hypervigilant in order to try to avoid any emotional pain or abandonment. While others learned a different type of insecure attachment style, where they learn that depending or counting on people they love hurts. So they learn to just stop reaching out, and they learn to self-soothe themselves and not to need much from people. And they do this in order to protect themselves against the perceived pain of rejection or abandonment. And being insecurely attached isn't a personal failing on your part or some type of character defect that you have. It is what your body learned was necessary to adapt and survive. And it's a way to cope when your body feels emotionally unsafe. And I want to elaborate here a little bit more, because when I say survive and that it's not a character flaw, what I mean by that is if as a child your caregivers were unavailable or inconsistent or even abusive, then as a child you had to develop strategies to get your needs met or to protect yourself. And not necessarily physical strategies, but more emotional strategies. So in order to do that, in order to protect yourself or get your needs met, you ended up developing behaviors like hiding emotions or obsessing over abandonment or things like that. And these behaviors at that time, they were brilliant. They were adaptive. They were effective ways to navigate an unsafe environment that you were given or dealt. And I'm just going to elaborate a little bit more here on these behaviors that I'm referring to, that I'm calling, protection in your childhood. What I mean by that is expressing your needs brought rejection or neglect. So then you learn to suppress emotions and to become hyper independent to protect yourself from being disappointed or hurt, thus creating something like an avoidant protection. And then if your caregiver was more inconsistent as a child, then you learn to act in this anxious, clingy way to ensure that you were not forgotten or abandoned, thus creating more of an anxious type of protection. And if your caregiver was a source of fear where you endured things like abuse or trauma, then as a child, you probably developed some kind of chaotic, conflicted, or dissociative strategies to help you handle the terrifying, hard environment that you were in, thus creating more of a fearful, disorganized protection. And these protection factors, they don't just disappear with time unless they are addressed and worked on. So then as an adult, what happens is they become what looks like character flaws later in your life. So the protection factors that saved you as a child, often as an adult, they become maladaptive in your adulthood relationships. And the survival mode that you were in as a child is still, it's surging in your body, causing you to pull away from intimacy if you're this avoidant type, or to create drama if you're this anxious type. Even when you are safe, these things happen. But the aim here is not to shame yourself for these behaviors. It's to recognize them as protection techniques that you developed at one time, and now there are things that you can let go of. So I want you to try to remember that if you are in insecure attachment, that was your way of surviving when you didn't have tools, the safety, or the power to change your situation. So your insecure attachment is really a testament to your resilience rather than a sign of a defective personality. However, I do want you to understand that you are no longer a child and that you have a lot more control over your life, so you do not have to continue to be stuck in survival mode. And I want to share a little bit about myself so you can kind of understand why do I even care. I am a therapist who has an insecure attachment style. And I didn't recognize my insecure attachment patterns early. I didn't even know what insecure attachment or anything attachment related was. I didn't even know my nervous system was already bringing a whole history that started in my childhood with it into my relationship. And because of this, I walked into my over 13-year-long relationship insecurely attached with my partner who is also insecurely attached, creating over 13 years of damage that comes along with being insecurely attached. But what I know now, after over a decade together, is that my nervous system learned to love in two opposite ways at the exact same time. It learned that love is both a source of comfort and a source of fear for me, which caused me to be stuck in this come here but go away pattern that I get trapped into. This pattern where I crave closeness, but I fear being hurt at the exact same time. So part of me learned to reach for my partner, to try to fix things, to hold onto our relationship tightly when it feels off between us. While the other part of me learned to pull back, to shut down, to protect myself by doing things like going quiet when I feel like too much. So inside my body and my nervous system, both things happen at the exact same time. The don't leave me, and the I can't do this right now coexist. And it has for years. And I thought that this behavior and this tension meant that the relationship that I was in was just not going to work. And that the relationship was just not fixable. It was unhealthy. It was not good. And I thought that there was something wrong with me. Like, why do I feel this way? Why do I act this way? But really what I'm learning now and working through now, and really what my husband and I are really both working through, because he has stuff too that he's working through as well. He's insecurely attached as well. So we're both working through this. We are working through the fact that we are recreating and reliving old psychological wiring that continuously comes out when one of us feel stressed or overwhelmed, or when we're in distress, or when we're in conflict, or even when we feel really connected to each other. This happens because of the fear. And more importantly, what I realized is that this wasn't or isn't about effort in our relationship. We have tried so hard over the years. We have tried so many things, so much over the years to just make our relationship better. And no matter what we were trying, it wasn't. We were still repeating the exact same cycle. We were still having the exact same arguments. So what I learned is it's not about effort We put in tons of effort. It's about attachment pairing and how my attachment interacts with my partner's attachment and how we create this unique relational dynamic that can be healed and regulated if we work on it together. And honestly, attachment doesn't exist in isolation when you're alone or when you're single. So it actually really remains dormant and hidden until it's triggered by interaction with another person. So really, when I got into my relationship is when my attachment stuff really surfaced. And that's because attachment really shows up in interaction. It does. And it's not just intimate relationships. Attachment stuff can show up in friendships and co-working relationships and any type of relationship, really, where there's a connection that kind of takes place. And attachment is really behavioral. So you don't just feel anxious. You behave in an anxious way, like calling repeatedly, needing consistent reassurance. And you don't just feel avoidant. You behave in an avoidant way, like shutting down, leaving, pulling away. So it's not just about a feeling. It's about behavior as well. Attachment also causes this triggered response type of loop where one partner, they pull away if they're an avoidant type, while the other partner's nervous system perceives that as a threat. And so they react to that threat by chasing the partner if they are an anxious type, which causes the first partner, the avoidant one, to pull away even further, which then causes the avoidant partner to try to cling even harder. And there's this like magnetic push and pull loop in that relationship. So like I said, this isn't just about your attachment style. It's also about how your attachment style navigates your partner's attachment style, how they interact with each other. And that's because your nervous system is constantly, unconsciously scanning your partner for cues of safety or cues of danger. And in healthy, more secure type of relationships, partners are able to co-regulate each other, where they're able to calm each other's nervous system. However, in insecure relationships, partners dysregulate each other, creating this high stress roller coaster type of environment, especially when under stress. Because when you're stressed, your brain stops thinking logically and it acts from old survival blueprints. When conflict happens, the anxious partner, their system goes into this fight or flight or hyper-arousal type of mode where their heart rate, it spikes, panic sets into their body, and they need immediate connection to feel safe. And then you have the avoidant partner where their system, it goes into more of a freeze, a shutdown, or dorsal vagal activation mode where they feel numb or overwhelmed and they need distance in order to feel safe. Which, can you imagine how that right there would leave room for misinterpretation to happen, where the avoidant person's need for space is read by the anxious person as abandonment or as danger, while the anxious person's need for connection and communication is read by the avoidant person as suffocation or danger. And an anxious and avoidant pairing is just one of the various pairings, okay? And it's actually probably the most common pairing that I see. And in this, the anxious nervous system, it moves toward their partner, begging their partner to essentially talk to me, reassure me, please stay close to me. While the avoidant partner, they move away, basically saying, I need space, I'm overwhelmed, this feels like pressure. And then the anxious partner clings closer and the avoidant partner retreats without even knowing what's happening. This is just their body responding. They're not even talking about this. And what happens is both in the end just end up feeling rejected and not respected by their partner, even though both are just trying to feel emotionally safe in their relationship. And neither partner is fighting about closeness. They're fighting about emotional safety. And when you don't understand that this is what's happening, that this is a body thing, trust me, I didn't understand this either. But when you don't understand it, you take it personally. For over 13 years, I've been taking my partner's cues and reactions and responses to me being activated personally without even knowing what was happening. It was just damaging our relationship. And what happens when this happens is that you end up jumping to conclusions about your partner's motives, assuming that your partner is purposely or maliciously trying to cause you harm and hurt, or that they're trying to be difficult, or that they're trying to act cold, or that they just don't flat out care about you. And that seed gets planted over and over and over every time you're in conflict, every time you're overwhelmed, every time you're stressed, every time your body's activated. And then you start eventually feeling like there's something wrong with you or with them or with your relationship. And you assume all of this instead of actually realizing what's happening, which is the fact that your nervous system has differences and it's reacting to those differences. It's your nervous system acting out of an insecure attachment style, which like I said, is a subconscious, involuntary, and deeply rooted pattern of trying to just keep you safe and secure in your relationship. And I do want to mention the fact that there are other type of attachment pairings. Anxious and avoidant is just, like I said, the number one, the most common that I see. There is a such thing as a secure attachment with another securely attached individual in a relationship. And that's really where we should all strive to be. And this is where couples, they still argue because arguments are destined to happen and they still mess up. Because we're not perfect people, we're humans. But in a secure attachment, their bodies and their nervous systems believe something very important and different than the insecure attachments. They believe that when we get upset, we can still come back together and we can return to each other, even through the hard times, even through the conflict, even through the stress, even through the times of overwhelm or disagreements. We are able to calm, regulate, and return to each other. So for them, conflict doesn't feel like danger or personal attack where we got to draw our weapons to get ready to fight. It doesn't feel like this threat. Conflict just feels like a moment that will pass. But obviously, not every attachment pairing is secure, obviously. And not every attachment pairing attaches in the same way that the anxious avoidant attachment that I've mentioned attach. Some attachment pairings struggle with things like intensity, while others struggle quietly. So for example, there's a such thing as an anxious and an anxious attachment pairing. And in this pairing, it involves so much closeness and so much emotional depth and so much intensity. And this pairing, it does not lack connection. What it does lack is regulation because their nervous system amplifies each other's fears, which causes then in turn for minor relationship stressors to be huge, major relationship crises. And then there's the avoidant and avoidant attachment pairing. So from the outside, the relationship looks calm and low trauma. It seems easy, but from the inside, there's distance, there's silence. And this pairing is just two people waiting for the other to make the first emotional move and neither knowing or talking about how to take steps towards each other, which can lead to a relationship that rarely progresses beyond a certain level of intimacy. So those are really the attachment pairings. But really the problem is, and this is where couples, and more than likely you, have gotten stuck. The problem is that you think if you just communicate better, if you just try harder in your relationship, then everything will work out and will be okay. But I want to be clear on this. Communicating better, trying harder, it does not rewire a nervous system. I honestly believe that it really just leaves you frustrated at wit's end in your relationship. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't put forth effort in your relationship or that you shouldn't try harder or that you shouldn't try to communicate. You shouldn't be doing all of those things. But what I am saying is that it goes beyond communicating and putting in effort into your relationship. And the earlier you can catch this, the better you are off because you can save yourself from years of heartbreak and pain and resentment and damage. And catching it before you enter into a big commitment like marriage is so wonderful because what marriage does is it magnifies it. So whatever patterns exist while dating only gets louder with time and with commitment. It gets louder with money stress, with babies, with exhaustion, with grief. And like I said, relationships don't fail because you and your partner don't love each other. They struggle or enter into crisis mode or fail because you and your partner's nervous systems are trying to stay emotionally safe. And you and maybe even your partner are trying to stay emotionally safe without awareness, without tools, without resources, without understanding of your attachment and how your attachment interacts with your partner's attachment. And without even knowing that attachment is even an issue. But the good news here is that attachment isn't destiny. It isn't some chronic, lifelong thing that you have to deal with because your nervous system, it can learn safety. Your patterns can soften and they can change. Your connection can become steadier and emotionally safer. And this is not because you suddenly become this perfect person. It's because you are now aware. And when you become aware, you can do something about it. You can learn things like how to pause instead of escalate the situation, how to repair instead of retreat, how to name what's happening underneath the reaction. And when you learn to do this, then love stops feeling like a freaking constant emergency and conflict stops feeling like a constant freaking threat. And connection, it becomes more possible. So whether you're dating or engaged or you're already deep into your relationship like I am, learning attachment isn't about fixing yourself. It's about understanding what your body has been trying to protect itself from and understanding that you are not too much and your partner is not too much, that you're not cold, that your partner is not cold, that you're not broken, and that your partner is not broken. Learning attachment is understanding that you are patterned and your partner is patterned. And when patterns become visible, they become workable and solvable. So work and solve them. Thank you for listening. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.